Brian Mudd Show is on News Radio 610 WIOD.
Right now, though, we're going to talk about the virus and whether it is potentially here to stay. It was one of the earliest revelations that hit me when we were getting into the pandemic, starting to study this thing. Went back and saw, okay, well, the worst pandemic in American history, 1918. What's the common denominator there? Oh, it's the H1N1 virus. The H1N1 virus, which 102 years later last year, is still the most common form of the flu. Well, what did that tell you? Well, there's a possibility this COVID thing might be here to stay. And here to talk about this is David Johnson. He is a healthcare expert, also the author of Market versus Medicine and the Consumer Revolution in Healthcare. David, it is good to have you. What do you think? I mean, is COVID, for all intents and purposes, the new seasonal flu?
Well, your analysis, Brian, was spot on. The H1N1 virus is a form of bird flu, and that's been around forever. The common flu, the one that we get a flu shot for every year, is a form of the coronavirus, just like the COVID-19 version. So, yes, it's going to be with us for a while.
In the way, just from a point of logic, I kind of look at this thing as if you have something that's otherwise spread the same as the traditional flu, only it's more contagious, naturally, that's going to be the thing. And I guess, David, the only question at that point is, are we going to get so good with these vaccines to the point where maybe they handle the variants too, that we can pretty much eradicate it? Because the one big difference between COVID with what we've seen so far in these vaccines versus your average flu season, I mean, the best efficacy ever, according to the CDC, is 60% for the seasonal flu, whereas we're taking a look at, our Pfizer and Moderna vaccines that are 95%.
Yeah, those all great points. And I will say that the ability to get a vaccine for a novel virus like this one was up and into the arms of people within 1 year blows me away personally. I think it's a scientific accomplishment on a par with going to the moon or the Manhattan Project. So you're right. Now, there's another aspect of this that's pretty interesting, and that's that something like 400 varieties of vaccine are either in the marketplace now or under production. And so right now there are 6, and there are a dozen more on the way coming in. And so a mutated version of COVID, the COVID virus, will not have to just overcome one vaccine. It will have to overcome multiple vaccines, which mathematically is much more difficult to do. So there is a link between how effective the vaccines are and the number of vaccines. And also, since we're starting at such a high percentage, 95%, it's not like it would go to zero overnight. So there could be some degradation of the effectiveness over time. But then, as you're saying, our technology is so powerful right now that it is not that difficult to develop a booster shot of some kind that could address any new variant relatively quickly, should it begin to break out in some form or another.
Yeah, David, on that particular note, wanted to get your expert opinion on this. Just talking to a reporter over in London, and they were just getting this warning that the AstraZeneca, which is the most common vaccine they're doing over there, which hasn't been FDA approved in this country, that it's not proving to be as effective for the variants as they had hoped. Whereas some of the research we have so far suggests that perhaps the Pfizer and Moderna holding up pretty well against the variants that we're familiar with at this point. Do you think the FDA's approach, and right now we're waiting to see what they do with J&J, which is less effective, but the one dose, do you agree with the CDC's approach to this point, or do you think they should be more willing to go ahead and let these vaccines roll out, provided that they're safe, and just adjust off of the information as we find it out?
Oh, well, the U.S. Relative to Europe has done much better. That's the one area that we've really excelled at, has been the encouragement, design, and manufacturing of vaccines. The other thing the United States does that Europe has not done is actually produce or distribute publicly all of the trial evidence. So not only can the FDA look at it, but academics and so on can look at it. So I think the FDA's approach has been solid. They purchased pre-purchased at this point, something like 1.5 billion doses of various vaccines.
Incredible.
From multiple manufacturers. So we're going to go in a relatively short period of time from a position of scarcity where we are now to one of abundance, particularly as the AstraZeneca and J&J come online with Moderna and Pfizer. Isn't it amazing how expert we all become on pharma lingo? But by late spring, early summer, my guess is we'll be flooded with these vaccines, and you'll be able to get them in the same way you can get a flu shot, going to your local pharmacy, doctor's office, or so on. So I think the FDA has done a good job of that. We've stubbed our toe a little bit coming out of the gate on the distribution side, but that seems to be straightening out a little bit as well.
All right, good information. Appreciate you sharing the time and the expertise. That is David Johnson. He is the author of Market versus Medicine and the Consumer Revolution in Healthcare.